beneath a flickering street light in Port Townsend, where the scent of salt and wet cedar hung in the air like a ghost. His hand reached up. Cale's fingers, trembling slightly, brushed my cheek, not in lust, but in reverence. There was no rush, no heat, just a kind of aching gentleness that undid me. Then he kissed me, slow and careful, as if he didn't want to take something from me, but to give something back. It was the kind of kiss that makes time go soft, the kind that blurs the edges of a world gone sharp with grief. My umbrella slipped from my fingers, hitting the cobblestones with a quiet thud that felt miles away. I could barely hear the rain anymore, or the distant, mournful cry of a fairy horn. All I could hear was the way my own heart, a forgotten instrument, had started to stir awake again. When he finally pulled back, his dark eyes holding mine in the halo of the lamplight, his voice was almost a whisper. "I don't want this to be a mistake, Ilara." Standing there, soaked and stunned, I answered with the only truth I had left. "Then don't let it be." That moment didn't come from nowhere. It had been building since the night he first walked into my poetry class at the Peninsula College Extension, a ghost in a black hoodie, late and unapologetic. I am Ilara, 50, a widow who had come to feel as weathered and gray as the coastal sky. My husband, Arthur, had been gone 2 years, and the silence he left was a tangible thing I moved through in our little house on the bluff. Welcome to the heartstrings and scars, where we unravel the untold stories of love, betrayal, and the life-changing lessons they leave behind. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. Cale was 25. He'd slid into the back row, his knuckles bruised, tattoos of dark, intricate vines climbing his forearms. He never took notes. He just watched me, his gaze quiet, measured, and deeply sad. It was when I read Neruda aloud. "Tonight I can write the saddest lines," that his head lifted, and for the first time since Arthur's death, I felt seen. After class, when the others had fled, he stood in the doorway and asked, "Do people ever get over grief, or do they just learn to survive around it?" He didn't ask for an answer. He seemed to recognize that I was living one. That was our beginning. That was the conversation that led us out into the rain. Now, standing under that flickering lamp, we had crossed a line. That kiss didn't feel like a slip. It felt like something long overdue, like the world had tilted just enough to let us fall into a version of ourselves we didn't know we needed. Not all storms come to ruin. Some come to wash you clean. We told ourselves it was about poetry. That was the story we agreed to believe. A Saturday afternoon in the old Carnegie Library, its high, arched windows looking out on a sky the color of slate. The air smelled of aged paper, lemon polish, and the faint, ever-present brine of the Salish Sea. We were there for his project on Rilke, surrounded by the hushed sanctity of books. But our bodies knew better. They were writing something else entirely, in a language of proximity and charged silence. We sat so close at the heavy oak table that our knees brushed, a spark of contact that sent a tremor straight through me. His stillness was a performance. I could feel the storm in him, the same restless energy that was beginning to churn in me. He picked up a collection, his bruised knuckles stark against the worn cover, and flipped to a page. His voice was low, a resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in the wood of the table. "You must not be frightened. If a sadness rises up before you, larger than any you have ever seen, if a restiveness like light and cloud shadows passes over your hands and over all you do." He went quiet, his gaze lifting from the page. His eyes weren't on the book anymore. They were on my face, my lips on the shrinking space between us. Then, without asking, he reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. Not forcefully, just with the weight of someone asking silently to be allowed. I should have pulled away. Ilara, the professor, the widow, knew exactly what this looked like, what it meant. But his hand was warm and careful. It didn't take, it offered. And I did not want to let go. When we stood to leave, I turned to grab my coat from the chair. I hadn't noticed how narrow the stacks were until I felt his presence behind me. Close, then closer, until the worn spines of novels pressed into my back, and he was in front of me, caging me in with nothing but his body and the scent of rain-soaked cotton. His voice was breath against the sensitive skin of my neck. What he said about sadness. I think you know. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe the words, maybe the way his voice trembled with a truth he couldn't name. I turned and kissed him first. My lips found his, soft then deeper, a hunger we had been denying finally spoken. His hands slid to my back, then my waist, his fingers learning the curve of my hips as if trying to memorize the shape of my surrender. My cashmere cardigan slipped from one shoulder, and he paused, his lips tracing a line to the newly exposed skin. He kissed it delicately, reverently, as if he feared it would vanish if he pressed too hard. For a moment, held between Cale and a century of literature, I forgot everything, the rules, the years between us, the ghost of my husband, and knew only that I wanted this. Him. This. I opened the door to my small cottage on the bluff that night, and before either of us spoke, I knew. Not in my mind, but in that deeper, quieter place that lives beneath years of silence. This wasn't rebellion. This was about something gentler. This was about healing. The lamp cast a soft glow across the room, illuminating shelves overflowing with books. Miles Davis played low from a corner speaker, a song that didn't ask for attention, just space. 2 wine glasses sat untouched, and beside me on the worn floral couch sat Cale. 25, all quiet eyes and nervous breath, sitting across from me. 50 and full of ghosts, my heart bared beneath a silk blouse. We talked, not of poetry this time, but of the guilt that clung to the edges of what we were becoming. I told him I didn't want to regret this. He didn't offer grand promises. Instead, he took my hand, placed it flat against his chest where his heartbeat hammered, a frantic, steady rhythm, and said, "Then don't. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to support us and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share." The kiss that followed was nothing like the ones before. It wasn't urgent. It didn't demand. It was a question, an offering, a sacred permission. He pulled me close as if I were something fragile and divine, all at once. We moved to the bedroom, where the moonlight spilled through the window, casting shimmering, shifting patterns from the water below onto the sheets. We undressed slowly, unwrapping not just clothes, but the layers of ache we had each carried for too long. He paused, his body a silhouette against the moonlit sea. "Ilara," he breathed, "are you sure?" I was. With every breath, with every scar he didn't flinch from, I was sure. We made love like it was a language only the two of us understood, a litany spoken in silence. His hands traced my body not with ownership but with wonder, his mouth kissing away years of feeling unseen. When tears escaped my eyes, not from sadness, but from the sudden, overwhelming shock of tenderness, he didn't pull away. He held me tighter, burying his face in my hair, and whispering, "Don't hide from me. You're so beautiful." We moved together, not in the frantic rhythm of lust, but in the deep, resonant cadence of two people who had been waiting a lifetime to be touched without being broken. Afterward, we didn't rush to hide under the sheets. We didn't turn away in shame. We just stayed, skin to skin, breath to breath, the sound of the waves outside a gentle metronome to our newfound peace. two fractured souls, wrapped in the quiet of something newly whole. I woke up alone, but the emptiness wasn't hollow anymore. The sheets were still warm beside me. The air held the scent of him, of skin and sleep, and something new, something almost like hope. And then I smelled it, coffee, a soft hum of life, from the other room. I followed the sound, barefoot on the cool, white plank floors of the old house. And there he was, Cale, in my study, shirtless, bathed in the pale gold of morning light. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor with one of my old leather-bound journals, the ones I hadn't touched since Arthur got sick, the ones even I had forgotten how to read, cracked open in his lap. I froze, every nerve alight with a fragile panic. But he looked up, and his eyes weren't judging or merely curious. They were shining, as if he'd just discovered the source of a river. "Ilara," he said, his voice soft. "These words, they're everything I've ever felt but never knew how to say." He stood and crossed the room, his gaze never leaving mine. He knelt beside me at the edge of the bed and kissed my stomach first, gently, reverently, as if it were a place where poems began. Then he rose, kissing my lips with a breath that felt like thank you. "This isn't about age," he murmured against my mouth, his hands framing my face. "It's about time. It's just finally our time." Something inside me broke open then, not in fear, but in recognition. My life hadn't ended. It had just been waiting. He had found the courage to press play. We made love again that morning, slower than before, softer, writing a promise onto skin with every touch. Outside, the world was waking, the cry of gulls, the distant hum of the first ferry, light spilling across the hardwood floors. But inside, it was just us, tangled limbs and shared breath. I glanced at the journal lying open on the floor, my own handwriting bathed in sunlight, and then back at the man holding me as if I were the poem he'd been searching for his entire life. Maybe, I thought, fate is a poet too. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was at the start of a new verse.